All right, so we go on to look at the ecological impact of protists. Remember, when we are looking at the ecological impact of something, we want to find what role do they play in the environment? What do they do? Do they help to recycle nutrients that are important to animals and plants? Do they help, or do they help other species to be alive? And also, what effect do they have on the environment as a whole? And again, we are also looking at how they interact with other species. So basically, when we're talking about the ecological impact of something, we are looking at what it really does as a whole to the whole universe, how it interacts, its biodiversity, right? Now, its effect on biodiversity, let me say. Now, when we are talking about this is something very important to us because this question comes in section C. Remember how we have those 5-mark questions in section C, equating to 20 marks, right? About 2 of them could be on ecological impact, and we have 7 things that we have to know ecological impact of, and one of them is this: protists, right? Now, first of all, I've put some protists for you to help you see them in life, how they are. And this first picture is, we have, okay, seaweeds. And the seaweeds are used in this food called sushi. Sushi is an important Japanese food. And the seaweeds have been used to wrap. You see this black thing? It's fried seaweeds. They are used to wrap your sushi. Some of them are put in some sushis. You might see them being put before they are even fried, so they can just place them around. But anyway, this is sushi, and we can see seaweed being used to wrap it up. So it's used as food. Here we have algae, which is a type of a protist again, which is important to aquatic life in the waters, right? And then here we have another thing which is called phytoplankton. Phytoplankton does photosynthesis, so it's very important. And you find it in oceans and stuff. You find it in water. So very important. It's another type of a protist. Now, what do we have these protists, or what do we have a protist doing in the environment? What are the things? What is its ecological impact? Now, we're going to look at about 4 things first. 4 ways in which protists affect the environment. 1, in water, so the aquatic ecosystems. 2, in symbiosis. When we say symbiosis, we are talking about how they live. It will be living hand to hand with something. Okay, they will be helping each other with something. That is a symbiotic relationship. It is when you have 2 different living things living closely together and helping each other. So in the first time we want to see how protists work in water, how they help aquatic how they work in aquatic ecosystems. Then 2, how they work in symbiosis, or in a symbiotic relationship where they live in a certain living organism and they help each other with that living organism. Then how they now work as parasites. And then 4, their overall contribution to the external environment outside of the water. Now, let's see. So first, this is how we're going to be thinking. If you're to answer this question, if they say help us describe or whatever, explain the ecological impact of protist, don't forget this. When you have this thinking, you can get the marks. So first, we talk about the aquatic ecosystem, how protists are important to aquatic life. Number 1, they are primary producers. That is in aquatic ecosystems. Number 1, they are primary producers. How? We have them here, I'll underline, they perform photosynthesis, which produces a significant amount of oxygen, the world's oxygen. And who is that? Phytoplankton. We saw phytoplankton in water. Now, phytoplankton is a primary producer. You know why? Because it performs photosynthesis, and this produces a significant amount of the world's oxygen. Now, number 2, they do carbon fixation. We've talked about the important cycles, carbon cycle and nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen cycle, very important to us because nitrogen is an essential nutrient. It's there in the proteins that you need so much in your body. enzymes are proteins, all these other things that we talked about. Now, nitrogen being so important, we also have carbon being important. Carbon is important because it also helps to regulate the climate in which we live in. So we need carbon to be cycled. We can't lose carbon. And these guys help in one of the steps, steps in the carbon cycle. If it's protists, they help in the step called carbon fixation. Carbon fixation, what are we saying? That phytoplankton, this plankton, an example, diatoms, right? They contribute to 1/5 of carbon fixation. Okay, and this is an important stage in the carbon cycle, right? And this is when we have these you'll be converting. When we say carbon fixation, you are converting carbon dioxide in the atmosphere into organic compounds. Like photosynthesis is an example of that, converting carbon dioxide to food, let's say that. So they are important. They do carbon fixation. That is that stage of the carbon cycle where you take from the atmosphere and convert it into sugars. Now, another thing that they help, so this is in aquatic ecosystems. So we have them as primary producers. Okay, 1, they are primary producers. 2, they do carbon fixation. 3, they are important in the food chain. We can have some photosynthetic proteins that don't do photosynthesis, but they are also important because they work as consumers. So they can be also consumers, and this helps in the marine food web. Okay, because we also need consumers. We need producers and we need consumers. So some protists work as consumers in the marine food web. An example is zooplankton. Okay. Now, another thing is they are important in nutrient recycling because they decompose, they help to decompose organic matter. Okay, and this helps to recycle nutrients back into the ecosystem, many nutrients. So they help in decomposing organic matter. So these are the 4 things we talked about: them being primary producers where they do photosynthesis, right? And we had them again helping in the carbon cycle, which is exactly in photosynthesis again. All right, but in the first one we had them producing oxygen, and then now we have them producing carbon. So that's the difference. When we talked about them as primary producers, we were talking about how they produce oxygen. Now, when we talk about them in the carbon fixation, as carbon fixation in the carbon cycle, we are saying they help recycle carbon because photosynthesis produces sugars as well. Now, the other thing that we have here is the food chain contribution of photosynthetic protists, which we said are consumers, which are important in the marine food web. They help in water. They are consumers like zooplankton. Okay, and that is an important. They form the base of the food chains, right? Then the last one, we had them as decomposers. They decompose organic matter and help recycle important nutrients back into the ecosystem. Great. Now, let's look at the other thing, the symbiosis. What is symbiosis? We say the symbiotic relationship. It is when 2 different things live together and help each other. So now, in this relationship, an example is wood digesting protists that live in the gut of termites. And what they do is they are helping the termites to absorb nutrients, right? They help digest cellulose, which helps the termites, right? They digest it, and the cellulose, the termite can then absorb it. Now, they will be living in the termite, which means that they are getting food that is being supplied by the termite. And they are also helping the termite to digest cellulose. So here is an important job that protists are doing in a termite. They are helping a termite to digest cellulose. That's another important thing. So here we have protists being important in our ecosystem as well. Now, and here we have again ecological importance of protists. Now we are having them as a nuisance. Parasites. What do we have? Pathogenic protists. Don't forget about them. These are parasites which causes diseases in humans and animals and plants. So humans are an example of animals. So we can say in animals and plants. Here are some examples. Plasmodium, which causes malaria. Trypanosomes, which causes sleeping sickness, and then blah 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 blah. Okay, you can have the other ones, but I think Plasmodium is the important one. It is a parasitic protist. You say to me, what? So Plasmodium bites us? No. Plasmodium is found in female Anopheles mosquitoes. So what happens is when they bite you, they release it into your blood. And it's a living organism that then goes in your blood and it goes right to the liver. It starts multiplying in there. Then it affects your red blood cells and then you start feeling those symptoms, fever and blah, 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 right? But this Plasmodium is a protist. It's a protist. So you can have them, it can be a real big nuisance. Exactly. Now we have this trypanosomes, which also causes sleeping sickness, right? Now we have the fourth contribution, and this is the environmental contribution of protists. What do they help? Let's see. First, petroleum deposits. Old, ancient, when we say ancient, we mean a long time ago, we had protists contributing to the petroleum that we have today. They contributed in ancient days. We have diatoms contributing to petroleum deposits, the oil that we can, the petroleum that we use to then make all these other things, petrol, diesel, whatever. Protists helped in there because they were helping decompose organic matter. So they helped in petroleum deposits. And the other thing, which we have talked about already, not sure why it's again here. We have zooplankton, which we said is an important consumer, which is important in the food web. Okay, crucial part of the food chain, feeding on bacteria. It feeds on bacteria. That's what it consumes. And then it itself is then eaten by other larger organisms. So these larger organisms cannot eat bacteria, but zooplankton eats bacteria, then larger organisms eat it. So now here we have our food web going. All right, now let's talk about the last part of these protists, which is how they directly have an effect on humans. Number one, we talked about how they can cause diseases like malaria. Okay, the other thing that we can have is this is just a summary basically of what we've talked about, how they cause diseases in humans, malaria, sleeping sickness, all these other things. And these can have a significant effect on us, on human beings. So they can cause significant health challenges. Another thing though that we didn't talk about is how they can also be pathogens to plants. Okay, how do they do it? They can cause diseases in plants, and these have an impact on humans because they will cause humans to have big agricultural losses. So they can cause diseases in plants, which can lead to serious losses in agriculture. Okay, and if that happens, then you have them affecting the economy. So that's an economic disaster, right? Here and then though, let's talk about this last part, which is how they can be used as food, directly affecting human beings. So seaweeds, many seaweeds are harvested for food and also making products like medicine, okay, industrial products where they can make chemicals or medicine. Here we have sushi, like the picture I showed you at the beginning. We have the seaweeds being used as sushi, and then we can have this agar, which is a protist that is used in food and also in chemicals, medicine, pharmaceuticals is medicine, okay, and whatever, and biotech. So here we have it, and this is what we have for protists. So don't forget all the things that we've talked about. In economic importance, basically, we saw how they help us by providing food and medicine. So don't forget, protists, we saw all their functions, and you can be able to write about their ecological importance. Now here, the last thing which I've done is show you an example of how you could then write, because when you get a question, you will be asked to write it as an essay. So here is a summarized version, which might not be worth 5 marks. You make yours have more flesh than this. Okay, here, protists are important to ecological balance. particularly in aquatic ecosystems. We talked about how they affect aquatic ecosystems. How? Through their roles in primary production. They act as primary producers. They do nutrient cycling. We saw how they cycle carbon, and forming the base of food chains. So this is you now talking about how they are important. They help through their roles in primary production, nutrient cycling, and forming the base of food chains. Their impacts extend to humans, to human health, agriculture, and various industries, demonstrating their broad and significant influence. So you will now write more. When you talk about their impact in agriculture, don't forget to give an example. Give an example, okay? Give an example, and then when you talk about the impact to human health, say for example, plasmodium, which can cause malaria, okay? And then you can have all the other things, and we can talk about their impact in various industries. For example, you now talk about agar, okay, which is used in food and pharmaceutical substances. And then for food, you can write sushi. You can talk about the seaweeds that are used as sushi, which is a staple food in some places. So these are examples, and there we have. That's it for Protist. Bye.